a donation of $200 million has been offered to a California university for student housing. The only catch? The 4,500 students will not have any windows. So is not providing a way to look outside your box really thinking outside the box? And let's be honest, would you want to live there? Well, hi Heidi, hi Brent.
Hello,
Hi.
hello.
Welcome to episode 16.
Yeah, moving along.
Now, if this had been a dorm that was on offer to me when I went to university, I'm not quite sure this would have been my sort of option, my choice of a student lifestyle. What on earth is going on here?
This was a fascinating little argument that developed out in Southern California. And to set the stage, Southern California is population dense. So clearly an academic institution out there is going to have problems with student housing. Obvious need. Along comes a donor and offers $200 million for student housing. He just has a little catch. Now, the catch is he's an amateur architect, has designed a building for 4,500 students. That is approximately the entire undergraduate population of an institution like Yale, to live in one building with no windows, and only 2 exits, and a population density equal to Bangladesh.
Oh my
If you
word.
take the money from him, you are contractually obligated to build his amateur-designed Dormzilla on your own.
Yeah, so it's an interesting quandary that he forced them into. I am willing to give you $200 million, which is a good chunk of money.
Yeah.
And I want you to build a dormitory. The problem is I want you to build it by my design.
Right.
Now, I assume that they pushed back and said, well, fire code says we have to have egress windows and we have to have so many exits. And health and hygiene says we need to have so many square feet per person in ventilated air. And I'm sure all of those discussions happened. But he kept pushing back and saying, no, this is the design you must go with.
I'm intrigued about this person. I mean, they've got $200 million to invest. They're an amateur architect. What do they do for a full-time job then?
Make
Because
money.
designing buildings clearly is not it.
Yeah,
that's-
hedge funds.
Right.
And
There you go.
Yeah.
And this is the fascinating piece where I think that it does relate to any business. Because he has lots of money, he has been validated that he is,
Of worth.
in air quotes, smart.
Yes.
And his passion and his hobby is architecture.
Yeah.
So he has decided to insist with people who may not have other choices that they have to build out his fantasy.
Right.
And
I mean-
I would imagine that certain listeners out there have worked for a founder-led organization where the founder of the organization says, look, my name's above the door, so clearly I know what I'm doing. So we're building a dormitory that only has 2 exits.
I mean, he's being entrepreneurial here. He's like saying, well, look, I'm going to invest $200 million. You're going to build a building that has my name on it as a designer. This will be a showcase for the standard of building that I will then export around the country and around the world. I'm just guessing this is their sort of business model. But I mean, from a comfort point of view, from a student point of view, to me it says, look, there's no blue light, there's no open window, there's no view, it's a prison cell. It's more Guantanamo than it is an educational facility, and the dorm is that place you come back, that you're writing your dissertation, that you're being creative. That's not an environment in which I would be creative.
It's interesting because part of the article talked about that part of his intent was to get students to interact with each other and not spend so much time alone and on social media. Okay, very good. I agree with that, yes. But maybe the approach you've taken, again, like we talked a couple podcasts ago, solving the problem with the wrong solution.
Absolutely. I mean, I had no problem socializing when I was at university, and I had windows.
Yeah, not at all. As long as there's a pub or a bar, everything's fine.
I think you're absolutely right, because not having windows, and I don't know much about architecture, but I did follow an architect for a brief while when I filming. Windows can present a problem. You open them, you close them, you've got sunlight coming in, changes the room temperature, opening them cools the room down. You've got a controlled environment if you don't have windows. But there's a reason we have windows. There's a reason.
It's called not losing your marbles.
Not going bloody bonkers.
Well, and there are a couple of environments that don't have windows, and I can think of two off the top of my head. One is a submarine, logically, and another one is a prison, because you don't want people jumping out of those windows.
Well, perhaps you'll design those two next.
Yeah, so I don't know if he was a submariner or a prisoner that made him think this was a brilliant idea somehow.
Evidently, I was reading up on this topic. Evidently, this guy has built one dormitory previous to this up in Michigan, I think it was.
Right.
Not exactly a favored place to be. People avoid it like the plague.
Yeah.
But I just thought there's real space to think about in this. Why do people have certifications? I mean, would you go to an amateur surgeon?
Right.
Would you go to an amateur dentist?
Yeah.
But we're saying that it's a good idea to have an amateur architect. And what's the value of a certification?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because this topic comes up many times in nonprofits when they're being donated money that have certain stipulations tied to that money. And that is okay as long as it's part of their mission and their strategy. You can put those stipulations to, I'm going to give you $10 million, but I want you to ensure that you support, feed, and educate 10,000 students in the local community, or whatever that stipulation is. This one, he's so far off the mark of what he's should be doing or could be doing, yet he's being allowed to do it. And I'm just happened to look over, and he happens to be 97 years old and live in a house with lots of windows. So what, does he not like children?
Yeah.
What is, what, there's something from the psychology view, there's something going on there. That they're just not hearing from him.
If we're reflecting backwards on the year when this came up in the news, I had a very reflexive 2021 thought of, I can't believe we're having this discussion.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
The last time, the only time I can imagine, or I can think of in British culture where people didn't like windows was when there was a window tax. And it was the more windows you had, the wealthier you were perceived as being.
Yeah.
Because you could afford to have windows.
Yes.
The bigger your house was.
Or the bombing raids of World War II. You had to stay away from windows.
One of the interesting things we did when we were doing some work in Berlin recently is we did go over to the East Side and look at the Stalinist Baroque architecture.
Right.
There's not a lot of that left because guess what? People hated it.
Yes,
But I am a big fan of where it's been preserved because on some levels, this 97-year-old amateur in Southern California is not far off on Stalinist totalitarian Eastern Bloc building where you build not for the comfort of the community, but to communicate some sort of oppressionist message. I don't know what his is, but it doesn't look like a cocktail party I want to go to.
No, I think he's also got large shares in an electrical company because the electric bill is going to be high, full of artificial light. There'll be no blue light in the building. I think you're right, though. I think we have got a problem, and that problem is rising populations and a need to house people. That's a problem we have now, and it's a problem that's going to get even bigger in the future. But this is simply not a solution that's going to work.
No.
Yeah. And I remember the housing projects of the 60s and 70s on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And those were built to solve a problem, but they were horrific.
Same in the UK with large concrete blocks.
In their own right.
Yeah.
It's solving a problem with a solution that at the time looked right. And I think 2021 has been a series of these. We're trying to solve a problem with the solution, but we're just not getting it right. Let's hope going into 2022, we can have a little more focus.
Yeah.
In solving problems.
So top marks for innovation or forward thinking, 0 marks for consideration of client.
Yes.
And human needs, yes.
Yeah, human needs for that thing called light, air, and the ability to see out through a concrete wall.
Or get out in case of a fire, yes.
Oh, there you go.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm sure not many people have been saying no to this gentleman for a long time. Many of his 97 years, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, and I just remember the tower in London that burned because it was built.
Yeah.
It was built badly.
Yeah.
And it was public housing.
Yeah.
So there are many examples of this where it's gone wrong.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that California doesn't opt for this option.
Yeah.
And what can we look forward to next time then?
I'm going to give you the teaser of excuses. Are you going to make an excuse or are you going to make a solution?
Right. Well, we're going to make a solution in episode 17. So see you next time.
All right.
Ciao.
Talk soon.